Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we will continue with part 40 of the Mercedes-Benz E-Class Coupe project. In the previous lesson, I spent some time working on the side glass and also the upper rail. But the problem is I think there's a little bit of discrepancy between the glass and also the canvas. Now, I do think that the canvas could be a little bit off. I don't think it is physically possible for to have actually the shape and be perfectly 100% compliant to the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make it as close as possible, but even if there's a little bit of discrepancy, I'm going to let it go. Okay, so the first things first. So the problem is, as you can see over here, you'll see that this curved surface line is coming outboard as it goes towards the rear. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually move the whole curve in. So I'm just going to grab this curve, which is responsible for this. I'm just going to push it in like this. And the outboard side, I'm going to worry about a little bit later. So I'm just going to push it out, push it in like this. I know the history is going to update. That is fine. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try to make sure that this curve over here is somewhat complementary to the canvas. So I'm just going to push in like this. I think that's pretty good, and I'll probably push this one in a little bit too. Like that. I think that's pretty good. Now it's a little bit more consistent throughout. Maybe a little bit more in. And I'll push this one out just a little bit. Okay, so I think it's consistent enough. I do wish to push it a little bit further inboard, but the line over here is perfectly lined up. Now, I know the front is like this, but it is due to this line. I do think that pushing it out is going to help in the long run, especially in this area. So I'm going to leave that. And now I'm going to try to get this all corrected. Okay, so first things first. Let's go to the side view and try to get this corrected. Now, first thing that I'm going to do in the side view is I'm going to try to correct this line. Because if you look at this, I think this is a little bit inconsistent. But if you look at the side view, let's see if I have the side view. No, I don't. So let me just bring that back. I think this might be a good reference. Actually, let me just resize it. So if you, let me just resize this one also. So if you look at this, you'll notice that it is actually very consistent all the way throughout. Well, of course, except for the rear where it becomes a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make it a little bit more consistent. So I'm going to start by just restriking this line. So I'm just going to pull it forward just a little bit. Actually, let me just look at the effect from the top view. Okay, I think that's not bad. I'm just going to, well, right now, I think it's going to help if I, well, actually, you know what? Let's do this. I would prefer it to be as close to this line as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it right on bottom of the line, whereas this one I'm going to stick it to the top of the line. Now that is a little bit off. That is probably not the best way to do it, but considering that this is, well, I think the canvas is actually a little bit off, so I'm going to use this method in order to do this. Now, also, because it is, I'm going to make it, I'm going to try to make it consistent to this line, and I think it's, as it goes towards the bottom, I think it's becoming a little bit wider, so I'm just going to push this out a little bit like this, so that it's a little bit consistent with this line over here. I think that's going to help out a little bit. And now, let's bring this curve over here. I'm not going to do any rotation or anything like that. And let's just bring this curve over here like this. And I'm just going to snap it over here like this, so that it fits here like that. Now it is going to make it a little bit wider, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably just push this on a little bit inboard, but that will be for a little bit later. Now I think it's pretty consistent enough. I think it's a little bit wider than what I would like, but at least it's somewhat consistent, so I'll give it a pass. Okay, so the second thing I'm going to do is to try to work on this line over here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So for this one, because right now it's, as you can see, it's actually very close to the outboard side. And if I make it a little bit longer to match this, I think it is going to become a little bit too wide. So what I'm going to do, well, actually, you know what? I think the current setting is okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to push this one a little bit up, just a hair. And I'm just going to make sure that this is actually either tangent or positional, but I don't want a peak like this, so I'm just going to push this one up like that, and I'll probably push either side down. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to grab this curve, and plus I think this is supposed to become a little bit there's supposed to be a little bit more taper as it goes towards the rear side, because it becomes slightly wider over here. So I'm going to try and mimic that. So let's just push both of these down. I'm going to push this one up so that it doesn't have a negative peak. In order to check that, all we have to do is snap a curve here and ignore this one and snap a curve over here. Now you'll see that this is slightly up. That is what you want to do. Okay, so right now I think that's pretty good, and let me just set up some curves over here. So this is the gen curve over here. I'm going to hide this one for a little bit. I'm going to snap it over here like this, and I'm going to use a stretch tool to snap it over here like that. Okay, so right now I think this is actually way too wide, so let me just fix that. So I'm just going to slide it in a little bit. What you want to do is you want to just reference this proportion right here. So I do think that I'll probably have to slide in a little bit more. So let me just push it in like this. I think that's pretty good. From the top view, however, that is going to make this a little bit wider because you're pushing this out. But as it goes towards the rear, I'm going to give it a slight taper so that it's not as wide. Okay, so I think at least the proportion wise, I think this looks pretty good. I mean, you do want the main surface to be a little bit wider than the black shadow dark piece over here. So I think that's pretty good. Now for this one, I'm just going to do an explicit control. Gen is going to be 2, real looks like 4 works. However, let me just check to make sure that it is consistent. Okay, 0.0064, it's not bad, but it's not great. So I'm just going to give it another degree to make it very positional. All right, so this portion is a little bit wide. Now, depending on the situation, I could probably try to adjust it later. But for now, I think I'm just going to keep it like this. And now let's just check it. Check this from the side. So I'm just going to grab the stretch tool. I'm going to snap it somewhere over here. Actually, you know what? Let's just check the angle on this. The problem is because of the angle right now, you'll see that this is actually a little bit off. And this actually makes it a little bit wider. So what I'm going to do is, in order to make it a little bit more consistent, let's just duplicate the edge like this. And I'm just going to offset it. And I'm just going to see. And you'll see that this is a little bit wider. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push it a little bit in this way. Now you don't want to do this too much because as you can see from the side view, if you do it too much like this, this actually becomes a little bit wider than this one. So you just want to strike a balance between the two. Another way to find out if this is good is just grab a draft surface. You can set the type to normal. And you can just draft it like this, and wherever this crosses, is where you are going to have your somewhat consistent surface. So I'm just going to intersect it over here like this, and you'll see that, well, it looks like it's pretty straight up and down from the top view. So I think this is a pretty good setting. All right, so let me just get rid of that. So I think this is pretty good. However, because of the surfaces over here, actually, let me just delete all of this because this is, yeah. Oh, well, isn't that wonderful? Got an save. So I'm just going to restart and let me come back. Okay, so I just recovered from an save. So let's get back into it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the top view and I'm just going to check on this. As you can see, it's a little bit, well, actually it's quite a bit wider than what I would like. But I can't really adjust it from the top view or from the side view because I think there needs to be a limit on how wide this piece is, because there needs to be a little bit of balance between this one and the actual main surface from the side view, as you can see over here. So what I'm going to do is, let me just go back to Alias and let me just put a little bit taper as it goes towards the rear. So I'm just going to go like this and I'm just going to taper it slightly. I don't want to do it too much because, well, I believe that these trims are supposed to be consistent. So I'm just going to do them slightly. So slightly enough that I can make this a little bit less wide. So I'm just going to grab this one over here like this and let me just take a look. Okay, so it's not too bad. However, I do think that this middle area, middle section over here is a little bit wider than what I would like. So let me see. Well, let's actually take a look. All right, so let's take a look from here. Well, I can definitely see a little bit of taper. Maybe I can just do a little bit more. So let's just grab this one. I'm going to say extend just a little bit more like this. And I would say that's probably the maximum that I can do without ruining the whole thing. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it like this. I know it's a little bit off here, but well, it's somewhat on target compared to before. So I'm just going to let that be. And let's see, well, this is a rail, so that's a rail too. Okay, so now let's try to get this a little bit more fitted. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to align, and as it goes towards the rear, I do see that it's expanding a little bit. Well, but besides that, I think it's pretty consistent. Now, I know that this is quite a bit ways off from the canvas, but I think it is actually physically impossible to get this corrected unless I make it a little bit, introduce a little bit S shape. And I really don't want to do that because that means that this one and this one is actually going to be significantly inconsistent in thickness. So I'm not going to do that. All right, so let's go back to the top view and let's try to line this up. These curves are actually not, they should be gone. So let's get rid of those. And I'm just going to align this piece over here like this. And it looks like right now it's 3 degrees. So I'm going to 3 degrees this way, and I'm going to make it 5 degrees this way. Position influence to max, and I'm just going to reduce the span like this. And blending will be on extra series of 2, blend factor of 0, and that should make it nicely fitted over here. So let's take a look. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Actually, let me just check the gap between the two. Oh wow, that's actually quite surprising. Even with position influence to max, it is barely positional. But well, that's okay. Well, while I would like it to be a little bit closer, but well, because it's just a offset against the side window, it's not, you don't have to make it perfect, so I'll just let that be. Okay, so I think that's pretty good, and let's go ahead and get started with the trim over here. Now this trim over here, I did make it consistent with this section over here. So let's take a look. So I'm just going to snap this one. Well, actually, you know what? In the previous iteration, I did make it a little bit offset from here, I believe. So first of all, let me just extend it. Delete the history, that's fine. And I'm just going to snap it over here. Actually, I think I might have made a slight mistake, and that is because this should actually stick to here. So that actually needs to be a little bit smaller. So if you see the section over here, you'll see that there's the trim piece, inner trim piece over here, but the what needs to align to the body is actually, well, let's see if I can, no, I don't think I can change the cursor. Okay, oh, okay, there we go. Okay, so if you look at the point of my cursor over here, so it's actually this metal piece that needs to stick to this line over here, which means that this one over here should actually be lined up to this section. So let me just extend this back. That should actually help quite a bit with the width over here. So I think that's going to help. Now, I do think that it actually became a little bit too narrow. And I think from this side, that actually doesn't match that well. So let's actually fix that. So I'm just going to snap a curve over here like this. And I'm going to use the stretch tool to, let's redo this, unfortunately. So I'm just going to delete that. And well, maybe I can keep, I don't have to do a taper. We'll have to see. All right, so I'm just going to do a rail over here like this. And I think that looks pretty good from the side. I think the width is not bad. Well, actually, let me just make it a little bit more. I think that's probably good. Yeah, I think that should be pretty good. And from the top view, well, I think, now I think it's starting to become a little bit too inboard. So what I'm going to do is, you'll see that there's a little gap here between this section and this section. So I'm going to make it a little bit wider by floating it. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to extend this one like this. And let's just take a look. It looks pretty good from here. I think it's pretty consistent here, although it's a little bit smaller. And let's just make sure that it works from the top as well. So I'm just going to go to side view like this. And I do think that this needs to be a little bit bigger. So let's just extend this one. And the intersection point is still the same. So I'm just going to stick it over here like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a rail from here. And just snap it on the curved surface. And I think the width is pretty good from the top view as well. So I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, so let's take a look. Now, I do think it is a little bit wider. Well, actually, you know what? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And now, let's go back over here and line this up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a line like I did before. It is going to be 2 degrees, degree 5 over here. Position influence to max, extra series of 2, blend factor of 0. And for the V degree, I'm going to change it to 2. And the spans, I'm going to reduce it like this. And now this section over here is actually not necessary. So I'm just going to snap it over here like this. Maybe I'll slightly extend it just a little bit like that. And I think that should look good. All right, so let me just check the gap again. Okay, 0.0068, well, which is not bad. I do wish it was a little bit closer, but well, that'll do. All right, so let's do the same thing over here. So I'm just going to do a rail. It's going to be 1-on-1 like this, and that should be good. Now, this also needs to snap right here, and it needs to be the same width. But as you can see from the top side, I know I matched it over here, although I probably need to pull it out a little bit. Well, let's do this. I'm just going to pull it out just a little bit so that it matches well over here, and that's probably the extent that I'm going to keep it at. And I'm just going to make sure that these did okay, so it looks like those are shifted as well, so let's make sure that those are aligned nicely. All right, so what I'm going to do is, well, actually this, oh, okay, so it is slightly off. So I'm just going to grab these two curves. Let's see, what is this one? I think that's just a duplicate, so it looks like it doesn't affect history at all. So I'm just going to leave that. And let me just zoom into this section over here. I'm going to resnap it like this. Make sure that everything is nice and tight. Okay. And I'm just going to make sure that this area is good. It does look like that's a little bit off, so I'm just going to check to see if there's any discrepancy between the two. Now, it could most likely be visual. Oh, okay, so there is a little gap. Well, yeah, there is, but well, I think it should be okay. So I think part of the reason why this is happening is probably due to the peak that I have over here. So because of the shape of the canvas, I push this in, pull this out, and push this in. I think that is making everything a little bit off. But since the shape is like that, I'm just going to leave it. However, I'm going to see if I can. Well, I guess that's not really necessary, so maybe I'll just leave it. All right. However, I do need this to be tight, so I'm just going to make it 5 degrees over here and degree 2 over here, and that should make it good. All right, so I'm just going to check to make sure that everything's good over here. I think this one is good, and I am just going to make this a degree 5 and degree 2 over here. And I know that it's not matching over here, but that's okay because I'm going to make this section a little bit wider as well. So, well, actually, you know what? Let's do that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the history, and I'm just going to extend this section over here. So now there are probably a couple of ways to extend this. You can just extend it with this, or you can just use a duplicate curve in order to make a different section or a different curve and just pull that out. Well, let me just try it this way and see if that works. So I'm just going to pull it out like this. Actually, that might not be the best idea. So here's what I'm going to do. Okay, so as you can see over here, you'll see that it is actually pretty local right here. So what I'm going to do is let's do this. I'm just going to use the first method that I just described. So I'm going to say visible first. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'm just going to slide it using proportional modification. So you just want to click on this, click this tool, and I'm going to set it to slide. And let's actually hide all the curves because of all the lines, it's quite confusing. So I'm just going to slide this one. I'm going to say probably mouse sensitivity of 50. And I'm just going to grab this one, and you'll get a manipulator like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to slide up to this CV over here. And I do have to balance this out over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide using this one. It's probably better to use this one than this one, just to keep the shape somewhat consistent. And I'm just going to pull it out like this. Okay, so it looks like mouse sensitivity of 50 might be a little bit too much. So let's make it maybe 5. I'm just going to slide it out like that. Okay, so I think that's good. And that it's going to keep it somewhat local to here while keeping this line. And I think that should be good. Now, there is a good chance that I might have to adjust that a little bit later. But for now, I think that's good. And with the slide function, you are able to keep the highlight very consistent because you're just sliding it in and out. So I think that is good also. Okay, so now that's done. Looks like it's a little bit wider, but well, I think this one is actually becoming wider as it goes towards the rear. So I think that is going to be okay. And if I need to make any adjustments, I'll probably just make this a little bit wider over here and there. So no problem at all. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. So what I'm going to do is instead of pulling the whole thing out, because I do already have it pulled out a little bit over here, I think I'm just going to locally do it. So let's go ahead, and I believe there's an extra span over here, so let's get rid of that first. So I'm just going to align. Okay, so position influence to 1, extra series of 2, everything's good. I'm just going to reduce the spans like this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it just a little bit wider over here like this. And I'm going to also make this one a little bit wider as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do an intersect over here like this, and let me just pull it out. I'm going to snap it over here, and that should translate to a little bit wider width over here, which is good over here. Now, from the top view, I think that fits pretty nicely over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this locally a little bit wider, but I think I'm going to leave that for a little bit later. All right, so that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and do this one. So for this one, you do want to make it a little bit more parallel over here. So let me just run a section here. So it's going to be 1 and 1. I think it's a pretty good fit, but I think due to, well, actually, you know what? I did push this one a little bit wider over here. So, well, actually, actually, you know what? I do need to make this a little bit smaller because there needs to be a little bit of width for the offset here as well. So I'm just going to make it a little bit narrower like this to account for the thickness. And let's do the same thing over here. So I'm just going to extend this piece so that, well, I can actually adjust these at the same time. And let's go ahead and use the same curve over here in order to make this section. So I'm just going to snap a curve here. And let's use project like this. I'm just going to make it this degree 2. And that looks good. Okay, so let's run a rail. It's going to be 1 and 1. And what you want to do is make the thickness somewhat consistent. Now, I know that this is off, and part of the reason is this one is a little bit pulled inboard side of the sketch or the canvas, and this is pulled a little bit outboard of the sketch as well. So what you want to do is you just want to keep the thickness consistent, because what you're looking to do is keep the ratio the same. So I know that it might look off, but what you want to do is in the end, you want the whole model to be consistent. So I think this should be okay. All right. So for the thickness reference, I'm just going to use the front, and let's just go to the top like this and see how that looks. Okay. So I believe this is the section that came out. I think that's okay. All right. And let's just run it through here as well. So I'm just going to hit a rail like this. And yes, that definitely needs to be a little bit wider, so I'll adjust that later. But for now, I'll just keep it like that. All right. Okay, so I think there's still a lot of things to do. So I'm just gonna stop over here and continue in the next one. Okay, so that's it for part 40. We will continue in the next tutorial, and thank you guys for watching.